This one's going out to all the parents out there who have youth athletes. It's one of the big groups that we really love to help at Head to Toe. And on the Movement is Medicine show today, we're going to go deep with Kimo and with Dr. Lee on this incredibly important topic. Gentlemen, what's up? Welcome to another Movement is Medicine show. Thanks for being in the studio today. When it comes to youth athletics, I'm looking at the two pros in the clinic right now, and I know you guys spend a ton of time workshops with our youth athletics, and I know we have a lot of different topics we want to cover today when it comes to how do we set these people up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the most rewarding things we can do in the office is work with young patients. You can affect people at the foundation, right? Like they're learning to move. If they learn to move correctly, then they're more sustainable throughout their life. They're more durable in sport. And ultimately, they're probably having a better quality of life.
Yeah, totally. So there's big confidence boost and self-efficacy and helping the kid get comfortable in their own skin as early as possible, and to understand what it feels like to be them, and to realize what it is to be them and how special that is.
Yeah, it's like we don't come with a manual on how to move properly. We don't come with a manual on how cryoperception and learning how to fire our different muscles and the different systems together. And one of the things that I know you guys have talked about before is that oftentimes when we have young athletes, and what would we define as a young athlete too, by the way?
I would say anybody under the age of 20, honestly. Like, yeah, you're still developing. Like, you grow until you're, for males, like 25, 27 at the latest. Yeah. Like, females typically stop growing around like 22. Height-wise, they're usually going to max out in their teenage years, and then they're going to develop more into their shape, which is typically how it goes for males too, but you definitely see big growth spurts going on in college as well.
So it's a broad spectrum, broad age spectrum, broad skill spectrum, and we see primarily here athletes in pre-high school, like middle school, into high school, and then college.
Yeah, so we see a lot of youth athletes like under like below high school age, so like middle school and elementary as well. It's more what we want to promote with this youth athlete program is like them being more aware about how they're feeling so that they can identify, oh, I need to do this stretch or this muscle release, or I can just do this activation type movement and I'm going to feel better. And if that stuff doesn't work, like that toolbox that we try to equip people with, then they would look for further help, whether that's with us or with another doctor, or maybe another physical therapist, an acupuncturist, whatever it is. So that familiarity with how they should feel and their comfortability, that proprioception, like you touched on, is massive for just development.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, talking about growth, is not just physiological growth. It's also emotional growth, and that can be hard for a kid that's super young that has the gift, and they just have raw natural talent, and they're able to excel in whatever discipline that they do, but there's still a huge emotional component that ties into that physiological, and that's something that if we can get in front of these guys, can help them learn how to see things and through a different lens, and tie those things together. So if there's great continuity with the heart, the body will follow for sure.
Yeah, just going off that, like that block might seem as it's mental, but it could just be an actual physical block that the brain can't figure out the movement because it can't access this range of motion in a certain area.
And then the kid thinks they suck.
Yeah.
But it's so it goes back and forth. It's deeply intertwined for sure.
Yeah, one of the things I think that's interesting you guys talked about before is that we learn our movement patterns from our parents, and then as when we're in athletic programs when we're younger, we learn our movement patterns from other players and maybe from our coach. And oftentimes those aren't professional settings in the sense that it's not like an NBA training camp or an NHL training camp with sports physiologists and movement pattern specialists and Olympic caliber coaches and all this stuff. It's more fun, right? It's more fun. It's more casual. And sometimes along the way where people can pick up bad movement patterns or just not even be aware of stuff that maybe they could or need to be aware of.
Absolutely. And like with this age of information that we live in, like this generation's so lucky because they can just pop onto YouTube and figure out a technique. Whereas like when all of us were kids, we had to go to a camp and learn from a specific coach, like this type of technique. And that was the only way you could access. There was no way to get a webinar or a video or a YouTube channel about it. So balancing that ability to access all that information, but also to move correctly so that you're sustainable, I think is the real key for kids to be really successful. The floor has definitely risen. Like, I was just at a soccer tournament this past weekend, and like the 12-year-olds probably could have beaten the college women's team that I worked with just because their talent is so high and they have so many skills that you typically wouldn't see in that younger generation. But now kids are just so able to do it. They can just watch a YouTube clip and then go play pick up with their friends. And that play scenario is what makes them better. Like, we're not going to make them better soccer players or baseball players, but we can help them move sustainably so that they can continue to do the thing that they love.
Yeah. So a big part of it too is looking at it as getting an early opportunity to clean up biomechanics or bring things to light, but then also giving the tools for self-preservation, how to take care of that musculature. What do you do? How do you realize when something's off a little bit and funny, and then start to be able to put the pieces back together? So it's not just running a kid through drills, but it's going to have a high component of education with it. So teaching what's going on. So when the person understands the rationale, then they're more apt to practice it, and it's going to be better practice.
Right. I have a 12-year-old patient right now who is essentially like pigeon-toed, which is really common with younger kids. Like, it just happens. Because of that, in him going through growth spurts right now, he's got a lot of heel pain and like calf pain. So what we've been working on is mostly like balance work, which typically kids are just always doing like weird stuff. They're always running around. But his component is specifically balance that he's lacking. So when he's dynamically running and moving, he's hitting different structures that he should. So that's why he's getting pain. So it's identifying where the leak is and then patching that.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is like with coaches, they're a lot of times they're dads or guys that are not physiologists and stuff. And so when they get into the team sport or the team play section of whatever it is they're doing, there's a lot of steps that are skipped. They go straight to skill acquisition, whereas we want to dial it all the way back down to the basics. Teach a correct squat, teach a correct lunge, the right shape that you want to be in. So a lot of these kids are trying to do complex footwork drills and they can't even stand on one foot standing still. I would see this all the time when I was helping my son's soccer team when he was a little guy. And so giving them a solid foundation to then progress off and then be able to have a chance to like really move well. And the other part is just like longevity of movement. We want to keep these guys being able to do stuff for as long as they can do stuff. And so if you have a good idea of what's going on, you're going to be able to take care of yourself. You're going to be able to make better choices for when you're out goofing off with your buddies, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, so you're talking around for a lot of the athletes coming into our youth athlete program, and that program is a whole series of different protocols and techniques and therapies and training that we do here to really help create what you're talking about, that robust resiliency and self-awareness and all that kind of good stuff. You mentioned a couple fundamental things, one being balance, Lee, you're talking about, and then you're also talking about, Kimo, another fundamental is just proper form and movement around some of the most functional and most foundational strength building movement patterns. Yeah. What are some of the other gaps that are pretty common to see in youth athletes?
The majority of it's more like a muscle imbalance going on.
Yeah.
So they're continuously doing the same repetitive activity, like regardless of what it is, that's going to tend your body towards that motion, which can lead to compensation in other aspects of your body, which eventually leads to pain. You more so want that balance of tension. If kids are like rounding their shoulders a lot, like they're on their phone or they're gaming a lot, things like that, then they're going to have a weaker back, as an example. So it's more so filling in those gaps, finding where the discrepancy, the dysfunction is, and then working towards that so we know when it's activated and when it's stable.
That makes so much sense. Muscle balance and overuse. Do we tend to see these days a gravitation towards overly specialized skill acquisition in one sport athletes where they're just basically playing that same sport the whole year or involved in putting themselves at risk for overuse type situations?
Yeah, you're either going to get one or the other. You're going to get a kid that does everything, plays like 8 different sports, has a lot of different types of stimuli that are attracting him to that area. And those are usually the more well-rounded athletes, but also the ones that are more durable. It tends to be that as you specialize, and the younger that you specialize, that you tend to have more chronic overuse type injuries as you age. And specifically, you can see that especially in baseball players, like pitchers. If you're like a 12-year-old and like you're already throwing 70 miles an hour, like you're already ingrained as a pitcher. Everybody sees you as a pitcher. They don't really see you doing anything else, but you might play other positions. That specialization in throwing like anywhere from 60 to 150 pitches a week, that adds up over time. So it's more so breaking that chain and that cycle. You'd think about it as we're getting active rest essentially from that main activity that they're doing. And that could just be as simple as the pitcher playing first base for a little bit or playing outfield instead or even catching. So it's just a different position in different types of stimuli. But pitchers and catchers especially, we tend to see the most overuse injuries in because they're in awkward positions and a lot of torque is going through that arm and honestly their whole body just to accomplish the goal of what the position needs.
Yeah, I agree totally. And then there has to be just so much, you just have to keep the fun factor into it. It's great to have goals and dreams and all that kind of stuff, but it has to be fun the whole time. And then you need to explore different things. You might, if you specialize too soon, you might not even realize that this third thing that you never even tried is actually the one thing that you were meant to do. So play different sports. Don't really consider, we're not going to the Olympics next week. We're not going to the national championship, maybe different things like that, but just being more well-rounded. And I think that's going to help a person too, and just the way that they see life. There's not only one path, there's multiple paths, and the only way that you know is you got to go.
Yeah, there's things you enjoy and there's things that you're good at. But you don't have to be good at everything.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying it, then that in of itself, especially as a kid developing, getting self-confidence, gaining self-esteem.
Yeah, you're winning.
That's massive for them. They get friend groups out of it. You might not be the best baseball player, but maybe you're the best jiu-jitsu player or like soccer player. But like those different scenarios where you're changing seasons, which was pretty much like the normal thing when I was younger. Like when I was a teenager, you played the season and there was no like full year of anything until I got into like later high school. That's when everything started to specialize more. So that passion that and avoiding the burnout is more so going to come from not doing the same thing over and over and over. You can lose passion for anything just by doing it repetitively, and especially if you're not gaining what you want out of it. That's probably your indicator to transition into something different so that you could be like, I really want to go play that thing that I didn't like a month ago.
Yeah.
How important is strength development for young athletes?
I would say it's not as important as people might think. Definitely it's not like the traditional way of doing it, like lifting a weight or like something like that. Like you and I would think of, I'm going to go get stronger. I'm going to go to the gym. Kids getting stronger, the best thing for them to do is honestly roughhousing and playing with each other and throwing each other around, getting used to moving themselves and other people. That leverage is, and realistically that oppositional force of like you're pulling something but they're pulling back, that's actually what drives real strength and functional movement rather than just like grabbing a weight and lifting it off the ground.
Yeah, there's way more input to sort, and so the system has to figure out so much more stuff. So yes, absolutely, there's way more getting done there.
Builds a lot more confidence with kids as well. If you feel like I can wrestle this guy in front of me, like that's a very confident, provoking thing in a kid. And that transcends the sport. If you're good at one thing, you're going to feel like you can do that regardless of which activity you're doing. So that's like a big thing. And also foundational, that security of mind, like Kimo was touching on earlier, like psychological strength is going to come from that.
So when a young athlete's coming through our program and they're coming to see us, let's talk a little bit about just some of the different modalities that will take them through some of the different therapies, some of the different approaches? What could a parent expect if they're bringing in, and what can a younger athlete expect when they're coming into the clinic to work with you guys on developing the variety of stuff that we just talked about?
Yeah, so from like a basic standpoint, like the foundational way that like Kimo and I look at things is you want to look at the best movers in history, right? That would be like a Bo Jackson or like Deion Sanders, Barry Sanders. Like those are football players, but there's also like somebody like Mo Farah, who's like the best runner in the world, runs like a 4-minute and 30-second mile, 20 miles straight kind of thing. Like those guys' form are what you want to emulate in your workout, like your functional corrective exercise. You want to emulate those aspects of movement. So like building columns, like having the core strength to actually sustain your weight and to move things. Like Kimo's huge on that, telling people like we can only move as much weight as our core can support. So if we're having balance issues, it's guaranteed like it's partly our core, like not being confident enough to move our body in the way that we need it. And that disconnect if in the middle of your system, in the core especially, that's not going to help you to move your lower body and your upper body in sync together, and that can lead to injury over time.
Yeah, you got to tie everything in together, foot to fingers, because that's what's going to be happening in the wild for sure.
So do we typically start with some type of a movement assessment type thing with them, where we're going to watch somebody move and go through and talk to them a little bit about their sports, their history, understand what they're doing in a year, kind of tune in to any problem areas then that either show up or that they're coming in with as a pre-existing type thing?
Yeah, so this is like the real meat of the program here. This is what makes it distinct from a personal training kind of thing. It's medically guided. So you'd meet with either myself or one of the other doctors. We go over, I'm seeing this, like this biomechanical insufficiency is going on here, or this is really tight here kind of thing. And then we talk to Kimo, who's going to be more the exercise driven portion. And with that guidance from the doctor and having that upper echelon of biomechanical, the way of looking at it, like evaluating it, we've noticed like with our patients, all regardless of age, that very profound with that type of guidance. Like Kimo's very knowledgeable with what movement is and biomechanics in general, but having those multiple sets of eyes looking at it and maybe seeing different things, but also it's all part of a huge system. It's just very like congruent and attacks the entire thing all at once from multiple perspectives.
Yeah, I imagine it reduces the amount of times where stuff gets missed or glossed over, or you're focusing just on one thing when there's 7 other things that are contributing to the particular issue a person might be having.
Exactly.
It's definitely, so it's more comprehensive, more holistic, more kind of total body, more rounded, developed, and then always benefits from multiple people's expertise. And then when they come to you, Kimo, then what are some of those maybe initial sessions look like?
The biggest thing is just meeting the person where they're at, being able to really distill down how they're presenting that day, general movement patterns, just the way that they're like the kid comes across. So really figuring out the personality, so then I can figure out which ways to cue, which colorful illustrations I can paint to get better resonance, better understanding, better buy-in. So we'd be looking at general movement screens initially. So gait assessments. So that tells you a lot about what's not going on in the body. More specific assessments in terms of squat biomechanic, lunge biomechanic. And then that picks off all the big ones. So I can see with your gait, you're flat-footed, your foot stuck flat, your hips don't slide side to side, and your upper back is super tight. So if we clean up that stuff, then we're going to at least start getting the kinetic chain more in line, so then we're not having an internal wrestling match as we're moving forward. Then we start to get into more specialized movements, and then deficiencies are going to pop up. So it's all about really pulling those deficiencies out and just hammering on them, but in a context or a way of providing also movements that they can do and they have great confidence with. So it's not just an emotional, physical beating. It's going to be more of an uplifting scenario, whereas we're discovering together and describing and teaching this individual what's going on, what we want it to look like, and then start being able to improve that. So they're going to get improvement. And then we'll give them movements that are just a slam dunk where they're super confident and they can just smash it. And they're just like, yeah, buddy, you're killing it. And so we just keep this progression of upward uplifting going on.
Yeah. What you're talking about is making it interesting, engaging, connecting the mind body, deepening their confidence and their belief in themselves and their ability to move, making it fun, making it interesting, educational, but interactive.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes to engage our younger athletes, and really all of us, right? That's what all of us want when it comes to maybe when you get older and lazier, then you just want somebody to fix you. It's just like, okay, just fix this. But it's like, no, it's a journey, and it's a teaching and it's a development thing as much as it's just movement assessment and movement therapy, which is a really cool point that you're calling out.
Yeah. The other thing where we taught doing a whole bunch is just like helping this kid to learn to express themselves. So lack of expression, self-expression is one of the biggest things that makes people short circuit and go crazy and do all kinds of different stuff. So if the kid's using themselves as the piece that they're analyzing and then trying to express that, they're going to develop a better grasp overall, emotionally, physiologically, socially, how to express themselves and be able to be heard. And that's the biggest thing is that makes people malfunction, is just not having a voice and not feeling like they have a voice or feeling that they're not heard. So when this individual is speaking to us, we are listening intently. And so it might take a little bit of more work on our point to distill down what they're trying to say, but at that same time, we're helping develop the skills to communicate and really to express themselves. Like all movement is self-expression. It's art. It's like style is definitely an ingrained thing that comes into, and everybody has a unique style. And so it's about how to bring that out in all aspects and help them just truly flourish on all planes.
I love it. Lee, did you have a point you wanted to throw in on that?
Like just basically going off of that is it's like learning how to be expressive, and that's going to lead to confidence. It's going to lead to self-evaluation. And ultimately, like you see a lot of athletes that don't have the ability to protect themselves in certain situations, right? Like they're like, I need to do this because our team needs it or our coach needs it, but they might not be feeling 100%. We see that all the time, and they just do it because they feel that they can't advocate for themselves. And that's one of the most powerful things you can do as an athlete. Like, obviously, you can over-advocate and put yourself in a bad position, but if for sure this isn't right, I know something's off, and you advocate for that, you can avoid an injury very easily. But that evaluation, that proprioception, that knowing when something's off is super important for an athlete that's developing.
I love it. Yeah. So if you're a parent out there and you're listening to this and it's resonating, you're like, wait a minute, this sounds way more comprehensive, way deeper than going to a camp for a couple days. It's because it is. I think together you guys have architected an incredible program and a process to really take these young athletes and empower them and educate them and engage them and get them moving better and protect them and create resiliency and robustness so that they can continue to have successful and flourishing careers in sports and life in general and have a blast doing it. So I think it's an incredible program. We do have workshops, not to down workshops. We do have workshops. I know that we've periodically are offering workshops and work with different sports organizations. So again, yeah, if you want to bring us into your sports organization, we can absolutely put together a custom workshop that we can bring the whole team through, the whole organization through. But again, just out there as a parent listening, yeah, bring your kid in. This is a unique and powerful opportunity to put them in a position to really succeed and protect themselves and have an awesome time doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Those workshops are extremely powerful. Like basically like going in, teaching kids how to use the lacrosse ball to loosen up their muscles or to do mobility through their hips and shoulders, or like I said, we've said many times, evaluate their feeling and know whether something is right or wrong. I think it's massively profound and definitely helps people to express their athletic gifts that they have.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think the bigger part to look at it too is we're not just trying to create super athletes. We're trying to create superhuman beings. Like we need more superhuman beings out there, and athletics is such a great way to do that, to give such a positive input to a person, but really create amazing people not just athletes.
Durable.
Here. Durable, strong,
That's what we want.
confident,
Yep.
able to enjoy life to its fullest. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing your insight, your wisdom. Appreciate it. And as always, remember, movement is the best medicine.